Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where experts in the field inform, educate and inspire our community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today, Melissa Hiemann, is a trauma therapist and author. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me on.
So, Melissa, what is trauma and how does it relate to our relationships with others?
Sure, so trauma is actually a response that we have to something that we feel very scared of. So it can be when we're growing up or even when we're older, where we feel a strong stress response. So we feel very strong emotions, like our survival is being threatened. And these emotions in our body get trapped in our body. So it's not just trauma as in what most people think, as in they've seen a car accident, been in a car accident, or they've been to war and there's trauma in that sense. That there is those traumas, but there's also smaller traumas that greatly impact us as well. Like if we stood in front of the class and we were little and we got laughed at, and then that trauma response could be, I don't like doing public speaking anymore. And it can be micro traumas as well with our parents when they yell at us, or we've been left to cry it out as a baby. That can be a very large trauma for someone because there's no safety, there's no one there to help them with that survival response, and it gets stuck in their body. And how it can affect us in our relationships is if we do have that trauma, say with our primary caregivers growing up, where they yelled at us and were abusive towards us in any way, or they neglected us, what we do is we think on a subconscious level that that is a blueprint for how love is and how relationships should be. And so we unconsciously seek out people that were often like our parents. Unfortunately, if the parent wasn't very nice, we'll seek out a partner that is similar to them, because our body feels that that is normal. And so some people are like, why do I keep getting into bad relationships? Or why does this keep happening to me? Why do I find myself isolating myself and having a lot of conflict with anyone? And if we think back to our childhood and what we saw growing up, it can really give us some indication as to why these patterns are occurring in our lives in regards to relationships. With trauma usually happens in relationships. So we say trauma can be relational because it's happened with either a caregiver or an authority or someone else. And so we carry that trauma in our bodies, and we often carry it into relationships that we have as we become older, as we find a partner, but then even relationships with our kids, our co-workers, the people in the line with us at the shopping centre in the queue. We're all relating, and so certain things can get triggered that we don't even consciously know why, but that person's made us very angry, or we had a very strong emotional response. So we might say something or behave in a way that is maybe an overreaction to the actual circumstance, and we can't come in with it with a neutral mind, and that's usually because a trauma has been triggered from maybe a long time ago. And if people became more aware of that, they would be able to maybe seek help and find someone to help them work through it, so they can be a more peaceful person, so their relationships can be more peaceful, so they know how to work through conflict in a non-violent way. So yeah, it's really important that we're aware of trauma and how it can impact our relationships.
Could you explain the link between trauma and domestic violence?
Yeah, so that's a really important discussion, and I think it's a problem that is really being exacerbated at the moment. So what normally happens is with trauma is that we reenact our trauma. Okay, so I'll just give you an example for domestic violence because I have my own personal history of that. My mother watched her parents be in a domestic violence situation. So her father would drink alcohol, and he would get very triggered and angry and violent. And so my mother, as a toddler, felt she had to defend her mother and be strong. And then later, when my mum was in her 20s and she met my father, who was a lovely, peaceful man, she almost sabotaged that relationship because it didn't feel normal to her nervous system. That trauma had created a blueprint of no relationship should be violent, even though she didn't consciously want that. So she left my father and got with another man, and he was actually very similar to her father. He would actually do domestic violence in the house, and I witnessed that. And my little brother and sister were very young, and at 16 I had to help her leave that situation. But even though with all of that, when I became a young adult and got into a relationship, I was attracted to people that were controlling and abusive, and I ended up in a domestic violence situation myself. For some reason, my body was just drawn to that. So it's not in every circumstance, but in a lot, we're just recreating what we saw in childhood. I guess you could say I was the victim, but also my low self-esteem, my insecurity, and my allowance allowed me to stay in that relationship for a little while. And then when I started doing the healing work with a therapist, then I realized that, and I realized I could break this generational pattern and cycle.
What advice would you have for our viewers that are feeling like they're experiencing trauma in their relationships at the moment?
I would say that everyone is probably, if you're in a relationship with anyone, you're probably going to have experiences with trauma. And the way that you can indicate and know that you are is if you're having quite strong emotional responses. If you find yourself in a fear state, or in a very angry or controlling state where you want to change the other person's behaviour to make yourself feel better. Or we can replay what we saw in childhood and maybe want to start fights, or we saw our mother be very quiet, so we go very quiet and we don't speak our truth. So just being aware, just having a think about how did that look like for me growing up, and am I overly reacting or overly shutting down in my relationship with this person? If you feel like you're having some of these symptoms or these relational trauma issues, then definitely seek a professional, a therapist, to work through it if you believe there's something there.
That's such valuable and important information, Melissa. If you'd like to know more about Melissa and how trauma affects our relationships with other people, please go to her webpage on our website, wellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, psychic medium and author Anthony Kilner will be talking about what do people mean when they say astral. Welcome back. Our next guest, Anthony Kilner, is a psychic medium and author, and the topic we'll be discussing is when people talk about the astral, what do they mean? Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Megan.
What is the astral, and what does astral travel mean?
The astral is a really interesting space. In general terms, and not making it too complicated, me personally, I see the astral as a realm that surrounds the earth. And within the realms of the astral, there are 10 by 10 by 10 by 10, and it's basically levels that you go up. Now, the thing about that is everyone will have a slightly different interpretation on it. However, our spirit body goes out into the astral and is experiencing all sorts of different bits and pieces. I'll get to that in a sec. The main thing is understanding that unlike dreams, which are a soul message that require interpretation, they're muted in colour, the astral is vibrant. It's vibrant in its colour. What you do, what your spirit body does out in the astral really impacts what you feel on your physical body. And that's really interesting. So you go into the astral to meet your loved ones, you go into the astral to meet and have experiences with teachers, learning, that sort of thing. You can go into the astral realm if you're in one way to remote view into the future. So if you're looking to get a job, you might put yourself out there and experience that in sort of between the astral realm and your physical realm. So it's really quite an interesting topic in general. More specifically, our spirit body is going out there to experience everything that is in that astral realm. We meet our loved ones, and so any of our departed relatives. We can meet our friends, so we can all go to an astral point together. Now, how many times have you talked to people and they said, they get up in the morning, they just think, oh, I feel like I've just run a marathon, I can't get my body right. And you talk to them and they've been out partying in the astral, because that's the big party place, that very first layer of the astral, closest to the earth as it moves around sort of semi-elliptically, around sort of 1 till sort of 3, 4 in the morning. And that's when most people, they'll have an experience, they'll wake up and it might be 1:11 or 3:33 or something like that, or 2:22. It seems to be a lot of universal timing in how all that works. And once your body's out there, like I said, we can interact with people. We learn from the astral realms as well. So they're actually people, spirit people that live there, that don't just visit, and we learn from them. So there's a whole lot of stuff that happens in that space. People going into the astral and helping and doing what they need to do, and they quite often they go there and they help people as a spirit being. So if somebody has passed away and they need help to move into that realm properly, we quite often will go there in our sleep, not even knowing what we're doing, and we might be a police officer, a nurse, a doctor or something like that, that then helps guide them to where they need to be and gives them that opportunity. So the astral realm has got so many possibilities, such a huge topic, and yet we do it subconsciously in our sleep. So when we are growing up from young children and our energy's developing and our spirit body's developing, it goes off and it experiences all facets of life, from intimate relations right through to having fun and learning about things, and it impacts us on a physical level.
What sort of training is involved to experience astral travel?
There are lots of different things you can do to learn how to enjoy an astral experience. And mostly though, to really get a hang of it, you would join a meditation group or a spiritual group, and they would do that as part of what they do. And then you can do things like go on group astrals, where you will actually meet the other members of a group and you will go somewhere specifically. Generally it's to do healing work on the planet or to help in situations that are cropped up from war or natural disasters, that sort of thing. So lots you can do in that space. They're the main things. Find somebody that knows what they're doing with it and then learn from them. You know, we talk about the ascended masters, people like Sai Baba and Jesus and all these other people, and they could actually leave their body in one space, their physical body as we would know it, and appear halfway around the world and look just as physical and real. And Sai Baba did this quite a few years back, where he appeared on like 3 or 4 different continents all at the same time, and people were ringing up to talk to other people to say, oh no, Sai's here with me and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, many cultures, especially many indigenous cultures, do medicine journeys, that sort of thing, where it helps to release the spirit body out of the physical body to go on a journey to understand themselves. And that's quite technical, and again, it comes from a deep cultural belief of what they're doing, so they know what they're doing, they do it safely. And guided meditations, having the right teacher, having, you know, to get them to go out to do that is really important in that space.
What suggestions do you have for our viewers in terms of their own astral travel?
Right, so good suggestions would be, there are lots of great books out there on an astral travel and how to do it. If you don't get the right information out of the book, then going to a good practitioner, somebody that knows what they're doing, someone that knows how to guide you there and bring you back safely. A good meditation teacher will be able to do it, a good spiritual teacher will be able to do it, and then, you know, there are the other ways, like I mentioned before, of doing it. However, I believe that we can learn this just through practice. And the other really important suggestion is, if you're doing this at home and you're by yourself, don't have the pets in the room. Because if your spirit body's flying off somewhere and your physical body's here, right, if a dog or a cat or something jumps on you, it scares you and you jump back into your body really quickly. And you'll know, and most of the viewers will probably pick up on this. At one point, you would have been travelling in the car, head on the side, a little bit of dribble coming out, and you jump back into your body like that. That's your spirit body's been out doing something because you're so bored with what's happening. It's off doing what it wants to do, and it comes back in a hurry, and so that's what happens. And most people wake up in the morning, they wake up with a jolt, and that's because their spirit body's come back into their physical body. And where most people say, I feel like I got out of bed on the wrong side, that's because they're not lined back up. So probably the suggestion is go back to bed or lie down, visualize your spirit body and your physical body coming into perfect alignment, and then getting up again and moving forward for the rest of the day. So that would be my top suggestions.
Thanks, Anthony. That's such good information to consider. If you'd like to know more about Anthony Kilner and what people are talking about when they mention the astral, please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, Naturopath lecturer and author Michèle Wolff will be talking about, are bloating and irritable bowel syndrome curable? Welcome back. Our next guest, Michèle Wolff, is a naturopath, author and lecturer, and the topic we'll be discussing is how food affects our digestive and nervous systems. Welcome, Michèle.
Thank you, Megan.
So how does food affect our digestive system?
Food can have a big impact on our digestion because it's going straight into our digestive system, and you've got several organs of your digestive systems. So when you eat food, it can impact that and put more strain on that, and it can also impact the way that your bowel moves, which is called peristalsis. So for example, if you eat too much sugar, you'll put a lot of pressure on your pancreas with the insulin production. So if that goes on and you have too much sugar, you can be at risk for diabetes, for example. And then also if you have too much sugar, that becomes a breeding ground for pathology. So you can get an overgrowth of abnormal bacteria like fungus and parasites. So eating can really affect your mood. More junk foods, white flours, sugars, unhealthy drinks, so too much alcohol, too much soft drink, too much caffeine, can have a negative effect on your gut and on your brain. And then if you're overloading your digestive system with any food, that can cause a problem as well. So for example, if you overeat meat and you're not having vegetables with the meat and you're eating that late at night, your stomach can't handle it. So it takes a lot to produce enough hydrochloric acid to break down that meat into a soup. And you want to have really good amounts of plant food to create that nice microbe, like having healthy soil, to produce a really healthy intestine. And you want to be having food that has the right amount of nutrients to give you energy and to help your nervous system and to help your mood. So when you've broken that food down in your stomach, your small intestine, which is 22 feet that goes from the stomach, that absorbs all your good nutrients. So you want to have plenty of nutrients for energy and for relaxation and to feed all your other organs, and for your diet to be more anti-inflammatory rather than pro-inflammatory. Having more of a Mediterranean diet with lots of legumes, lots of green leafy vegetables, good oils like olive oils, nuts and seeds, they have a really positive effect. And having a variety. So if you have 40 different plant foods a week, that feeds your whole microbiome. Now that can seem overwhelming, but if you have a curry, say, with 7 spices, those spices count as plant food. So you could have as a base onion, garlic, a turmeric, cumin, and some Italian herbs, and you've got quite a range already. So it's increasing the diversity of plant foods and avoiding unhealthy drinks and unhealthy foods, particularly junk foods, particularly sugars, and keeping carbohydrates quite low as well. So carbohydrates should only be quarter of your diet, not half of your diet.
How does food actually affect our nervous system?
So food affects your nervous system in a couple of ways. Firstly, by the nutrients it contains. So your nervous system needs a lot of magnesium, a lot of calcium, a lot of potassium, a lot of B vitamins in order to operate effectively. And the adrenal glands, which are part of your nervous system that are responsible for the flight and fright, they use up a lot of vitamin C. So you need to feed and nourish them with those good nutrients and good complex carbohydrates, which give you energy without overdoing the carbohydrates. And the things that negatively impact the nervous system are your cakes and your biscuits and your fast foods. And you know, if you're healthy, the 80-20 rule is okay. If 80% of the time your diet is good and you're creating that really healthy microbiome, you're absorbing really good nutrients, then 20% of the time, you know, you can have your treats. It just depends on where you are. If you've got a serious disease, then you have to be stricter for longer. And if you have some sort of pathology, that will have an effect on your nervous system in making you more irritable or more angry. And so starving that out by not having carbohydrates and sugars will help your mood. And then you've got foods that really help to relax you. So a glass of warm milk with a spice, say some warm milk with cardamom, or if you can't tolerate milk, then hot coconut milk or almond milk is very, very soothing, relaxing, and can help you sleep better, which is part of your nervous system as well. And then you've got foods that spice the nervous system up a bit. So a little bit of dark chocolate has something called theothrombin in it, which is a little bit like caffeine, so that will make you very alert. But if you overdo the dark chocolate, you'll get anxiety and you'll be too hyperactive. So that's part of your nervous system as well. So it's just having that balance of not having things that make you too hyperactive and anxious, and not having things that make you depressed and sluggish, and keeping that middle balance with a good Mediterranean diet and anti-inflammatory foods and spices.
Do you have any special tips for our viewers?
So if you're having junk foods, move to a more healthy junk food. So for example, takeaways, sushi takeaway would be much more healthy than a pizza. So just have a look around at what you can do. If you have really busy days, on the days that you're not busy, get some glass containers and freeze lots of meals so that you can pull them out on days that you're busy, and then you'll have less junk food. Avoid having things in the house that are unhealthy. So you know, you don't have to have chocolates and biscuits and cakes in the house unless you're having a particular visitor that day, but it's not healthy for your family either. And instead have an abundance of fruit and vegetables in your pantry and in your fridge and on your kitchen bench, so that they are healthy snacks. Nuts and seeds are healthy snacks as well.
That's such good information, Michèle. Thank you. If you'd like to know more about how food affects our digestive system and our nervous system and Michèle Wolff, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And we'll say bye-bye for now, and we'll see you next time. If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.